That night, the Carolina wind cut through the hollow concrete corridors, carrying the smell of damp grass, barbed wire, and the dry chill of an old air conditioning unit that never rested. My barracks room was no bigger than a memory box. Whitewashed cinder block walls, low ceiling, a fluorescent tube buzzing with stubborn static, the olive green army blanket folded with regulation corners at the foot of the bed. I sat on the floor with my back against the bed frame, my right wrist wrapped in elastic tape after night fire training. On the desk by the window sat the only photo I'd brought from home, my mother holding me in the backyard, her hair caught in the wind like a ribbon, her smile warm enough to carry me through any winter. I glanced at my watch. 23:47. Outside, a Humvee rolled past, headlights flickering across the wall like broken waves. I reached up, brushed the dust off the picture frame, and reminded myself to get rain gear for the new recruits standing guard tomorrow. Another night like any other, steady as a marching cadence, until the metallic scrape at the lock shattered the rhythm and synced to my heartbeat. The latch rattled once, twice, then snapped. A shadow surged in, large as a wall collapsing. Cheap liquor clung to sweat and stale cigarettes, the kind of smell you picked up in nameless bars off post. Before I could rise, a hand like an iron clamp crushed my shoulder, slammed me flat on the floor. "Well, look at the General's golden girl," the voice sneered, each word sandpapered. "Victor," I said, not shouting, not trembling. I'd wrestled down men twice his size, cuffed glass-eyed junkies on Fayetteville streets at 2 a.m. But this wasn't a street. This was my room, and he wasn't just any man. He was my uncle, the same man who once lifted me over the back fence to steal apples, who taught me to change a tire under a merciless summer sun. "You don't belong here," I snapped, twisting for leverage from my hip. He chuckled, sour breath in my face. "Belong on this base, who do you think grants permission?" His other hand struck across my face. White stars burst behind my eyes, the buzzing light turned to a hornet swarm. My tongue met blood, salt, hot, real. I drove my knee into his ribs, clawed halfway free before my right wrist was wrenched backward. A dry crack, sharp as breaking a pencil. Pain ripped open my chest, seared my vision white. My breath came in shallow sips, like sucking paint fumes through a straw. Victor pressed his knee into my stomach, heavy, merciless. "You think those ribbons make you better than me?" He jerked his chin toward the wall where my nameplate and service ribbons hung. Outsiders might see them as scraps of colored cloth. To me, every strip carried a face, a sleepless night, a road paved with red dust. "Get out of my room, now." My voice cut like wire. He laughed, scanning the room for prey until his eyes landed on the photo of my mother. He lifted it with 2 fingers, dangling it like a plucked bird. This weakness stains the ward name." Then slower, deliberate, "That's what your father said." Cold poured through me, January lake cold, straight down my spine. "What did you say?" Victor smirked. "He called me this afternoon, said it was time to clean up the emotional garbage before the next medal ceremony. He's sick of you dragging your mother's sentimental crap into the family's reputation." He tilted the frame, plucked a shard of glass from the corner, its edge hooked and sharp. "Let's test it just one line." He dragged it across the photo, leaving a scar through my mother's smile. Something in me snapped. I launched with my good arm, shoulder slamming his chest. We crashed against the bed, mattress springing, then thudding back, the headboard slamming the wall until the training calendar fell to the floor. He wrapped an arm around my throat, a crude chokehold stinking of tobacco. I jammed my elbow into his ribs once, twice, 3 times, each strike a spark up my arm. He cursed, tightening his grip. Dark spots danced at the edges of my sight. My heart drummed from steady bomp-bomp into broken beats. "Victor," I rasped, "stop. You're assaulting an officer on base." "Oh," he mocked, "an officer, the general's niece, Captain Ward, Miss Military Police, the pride of the family." His lips brushed my ear, words meant for me alone. "And me, I'm the second mistake your father's hidden his whole life. The first was your mother." The word sliced clean, leaving no blood, only emptiness. I twisted, shifted weight, slipped when his hand slid with sweat. I crawled, knees and one arm, just in time to grab the photo as his hand wrenched my hair back. Pain ripped across my scalp, my eyes flooding, not with tears, but with alarms blaring through my body. The door opened. Polished shoes stopped at the threshold. Steady breathing, practiced, contained. For a heartbeat, I thought salvation had arrived. I turned. Hall light spilled across 4 silver stars, bright as a constellation. Hair cropped short, silver at the edges. A face I'd memorized in mirrors, practicing how to smile like his, stone cold now, bronzed into a statue. My father stood there, hands clasped behind his back as if entering a boardroom. He looked past me, past Victor, down to the blood spot on the floor like spilled wine. His eyes lingered on the photo face down, the glass shard, the clock blinking 23:59, struggling not to flip to a new day. "Sir," Victor said, dropping my hair like rope. His tone flipped obedient like a private caught sneaking a cigarette. "We were just—" Silence. My father didn't raise his voice. The word fell soft, but it landed heavy, freezing us both. I pushed myself up, wrist screaming. I wanted to call him Dad. I'd called him that when I wrecked my bike at 7, when I hid my first rejection letter at 13, when I opened my rock acceptance at 17. Each time the word came out full, alive, rooted in trust. Tonight it stopped at my tongue. "Sir." He stepped forward, shoes cutting into the square of light, his shadow long and straight across me like a flagpole. He studied me, 1 second, 2, as if counting my breaths, then delivered his verdict like briefing notes. "You've disgraced this family, Alina." The room hollowed. The stench of Victor's smoke disappeared. The buzzing light cut out. All of Carolina shrank to those 5 words. "You disgraced this family." I opened my mouth. He broke in. "This is a base. You know what that means. There are cameras, gate logs, witnesses." My father turned to Victor, his gaze, the same one that froze young officers into statues, softened, almost tender. "Were you drunk?" "Yes," Victor said quickly, a mask of remorse. "I came to apologize. We argued. Enough." My father cut him short, severing the lie mid-wire. He faced me again, no trace left of the man I once believed in. Only General Ward standing high where the air thinned and froze. "You're military police," he said evenly. "You know better than anyone, before the public, before subordinates, before the press. Your hands must stay clean." He glanced at my blood-stained knuckles. "Tonight they're dirty. You lost control. You let emotion drive." I barked a laugh, sharp as a drowning cough. "He broke into my room. He choked me." Victor crossed himself, slow and mocking. Rage clawed inside me, but I dug my nails into my thigh instead of his face. My father's eyes fell to the overturned photo. "Your mother," he said, the first mention of her all night, would be heartbroken. He paused. "Because of you." The pain in my wrist vanished, replaced by an icy current through my chest. Heartbroken because of me. Not because her smile was scarred, not because her memory was trashed in my room, but because I had shamed the Ward name. "What do you want?" My voice sounded foreign, sticky. "A report of accidental altercation. For you to learn to stand down," he said, slipping the word father like a blade, sharp, cold. "A true soldier knows when to retreat to preserve the unit, preserve the honor." He nodded at Victor. "He'll leave the base tonight. And me. You'll get checked at medical." He hesitated, then added casually, "and clean this room up." Something cracked inside, not a bone, but the sound of a rope snapping in a storm. He turned, his shadow folding back toward the hall. The scent of his pressed uniform mingled with Victor's smoke into one foul perfume, the stench of ceremony built on filth. "Good night, Captain Ward," he said, signing off like a memo. Victor threw me a look, half pity, half triumph, and followed him out. The door clicked shut, the broken lock clattering against the frame louder than it should have been. Hall lights went dark. My room drowned in that faint green glow only military nights have, the kind of light that shows you only what you don't want to see. I sat frozen, ears ringing. My wrist pulsed like a trapped bird. I picked up the photo. The scratch slashed through my mother's smile like lightning across a summer sky. A dark speck of blood stained the corner. Mine, his, I couldn't tell. I held it in my palm like fragile relic glass, insane enough to think if I breathed gently, the scar might disappear. Outside, a squad's cadence echoed from the PT field. 1, 2, 3, 4. The bass lived on, the world marched in rhythm. Only my room lagged behind. I stood, swaying as the chokehold's ghost loosened. I ripped a towel, bound my wrist with a hair clip. I whispered to myself in the clipped tone of a police report. "You're MP. Log it, standardize, control the scene." I bagged the glass shard in a Ziploc, snapped photos of the wall, the floor, the blood, the frame. I scribbled date and time on a note, taped it to the bag. Not peace, but a rung to grip while the boat flipped. The wind rattled the training calendar, exposing the star I'd drawn on tomorrow's square. 0700, honor guard rehearsal for my father's medal ceremony. There would be flags folded in perfect corners, brass polished to blinding shine, handshakes and smiles and hollow congratulations. And me, standing straight as a pole, chin lifted, eyes forward, unshaken. I propped my mother's photo on the desk, angled so the scratch caught less light. "I'm sorry," I whispered, not sure for what, for failing to protect her smile from a cheap shard, for letting my uncle cross the threshold, for watching my father walk out the door. Fort Liberty had a saying, 3 things never sleep: wind, discipline, and silence. That night I learned silence has the shape of a uniform pressed sharp behind a door, the smell of a metal freshly polished, the sound of a door closing by procedure. Silence swallows both sobs and laughter. It taught me to swallow both until nothing was left. I switched off the light. Darkness poured in cold, sterile, merciless. I lay curled, wrist clutched, nose in the dusty blanket. Before sleep claimed me, I looked once more at my mother's photo. The scratch lay quiet, a new border carved across the ward map. And under the ink, I swore I could hear her voice, not in words, but in the way she used to press her hand to my fevered forehead. "Get up, daughter. Not tonight. But soon." A helicopter rumbled overhead, rattling the window, throwing fractured light across the wall like a heart struggling back into rhythm. I followed the sound until only the wind remained. Then I slept, dreamless. I was born in a small coastal town in California, where every morning began with the crash of waves and the scent of freshly cut grass drifting through the window. My father was an aerospace engineer, thin frame, steady hands that could draft aircraft schematics by day and show me how to wax my first surfboard by evening. He'd say, "The ocean's brutal, kiddo, but you never turn your back on it. You face each wave head on." Every weekend he drove me in his beat-up Ford Ranger, the radio stuck on classic rock. I'd ride shotgun, clutching a surfboard taller than me, feeling like a princess on a ragged chariot. We'd head to Santa Monica, where he taught me how to read the rhythm of the surf, how to feel the pull of the current under my feet. Mom sat on the sand, a high school English teacher with a thick novel always in her hands. She'd glance up every now and then, smiling at us. That was my paradise. My dad, my mom, the ocean, and endless California sun. I thought it would last forever. But forever ended one gray afternoon on the 405. A truck jackknifed across lanes. My father died on the spot. I still remember the 2 highway patrol officers standing on our porch, rain dripping from their hats onto stone-faced expressions. Their voices were flat, mechanical, delivering the death notice that shattered my world. Mom didn't cry the way most people cry. She howled, an unholy sound that ripped through the house, a sound that still claws at me in nightmares. After the funeral, the house that once smelled of coffee and her cinnamon muffins reeked of lilies and endless casserole trays from neighbors. Then she quit her job, locked herself in the dark bedroom. At 12 years old, I was making peanut butter sandwiches for dinner, studying the manual of an ancient washing machine to figure out laundry. The house became suffocatingly quiet. I moved like a shadow, afraid the floorboards would betray me with a creak. The insurance payout barely covered the basics. Red-stamped overdue notices piled in the mailbox. Occasionally, Mom emerged hollow-eyed, slowly selling things piece by piece. My grandmother's bracelet, Dad's tools. I watched helplessly as our home was dismantled one brick at a time. Then a name entered my life, Caleb. He appeared when I was 14, recommended by a neighbor to fix the leaky roof. Big man, broad shoulders filling the doorway, bringing with him the hammer's rhythm, the smell of fresh-cut lumber, and the noise our house had lacked for years. He replaced faucets for free, repaired the broken gate, carried grocery bags inside, cracked lame jokes that somehow coaxed Mom's first real laugh in 2 years. Light crept back into her eyes. He took her out to dinner, helped her refinance the mortgage. One evening, I overheard him whisper in her ear, "A beautiful woman like you shouldn't have to carry this alone." And she glowed like a girl in love for the first time. When they announced their engagement, Caleb handed me a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate silver necklace. As he clasped it around my neck, his hot breath brushed my ear. "Your daddy's dead. I'll take care of you and your mom now as long as you know your place." Ice shot through my body. The necklace wasn't a gift. It was a collar. A few steps away, Mom looked at us through happy tears, completely unaware he just staked a claim with a threat. The night after the wedding, I sat in my room blasting Tom Petty through headphones, trying to drown the world. The door slammed open. Caleb stormed in, scowl sharp enough to cut. He yanked the headphones off, growling. "In this house, nobody shuts themselves away. We're family, doors stay open. Got it." I froze, eyes darting past him to the hallway. Mom stood there, silent, staring at the carpet, her hands gripping her own shoulders. I begged her with my eyes. She didn't say a word. Her silence was his victory, and my first defeat. From that night on, I knew the house wasn't mine anymore. It was his fortress. I woke to the sterile sting of antiseptic and the steady beepy-beep of a monitor, like the cadence of a stretcher drill. The ceiling was too white. Fluorescent light sliced my eyes like a thin blade. I blinked until the room steadied. My right wrist strapped in a splint, gauze pressed to my shoulder, ribs aching with every breath. A half-drawn curtain separated me from the hallway, cold air from the vent slipping underneath with the dry bite unique to every military infirmary. "Good morning, Captain Ward." The voice was low, unhurried, not falsely gentle. A woman in her 50s stepped from behind the curtain, gray hair pulled back in a bun, brown eyes that looked like they'd witnessed 1,000 night shifts. The nameplate on her chest read Marianne. She set a tray of instruments down, hands calloused from gauze, sutures, and syringes. "Don't try to sit up yet. Even the toughest bird has to test its wings before it flies." I gave a half-smile. "I'm not a bird, ma'am. I'm military police. MPs break bones just like anyone else." She lifted my wrist gently, checked circulation, and lowered it with more care than I'd felt from anyone since last night. "Where does it hurt most?" "My right wrist and my pride." My voice was dry as sandpaper. Marianne didn't press. She adjusted my Roman IV line, replaced an electrode, fluffed the pillow. In military hospitals, silence often speaks louder than questions. Through the curtain, I glimpsed white coats moving. The door opened. Major Vaughn entered, thin-framed, wire-rimmed glasses, the face of a man who hadn't slept properly in years. "Captain Ward," he read from the chart in an administrative monotone. "Severe sprain to right wrist, soft tissue trauma in rib area, no internal bleeding. We've taken X-rays. Possible hairline fracture, splint applied. You lost consciousness for approximately 6 minutes per nurse report. I need a full copy of my records," I said immediately. "X-rays, intake report, and the list of who brought me in." Vaughn looked up, eyes narrowing behind his glasses. "We'll follow procedure, rest first." "Whose procedure, sir?" I shot back. "The Army hospitals or general wards?" The silence was sharp, antiseptic as an alcohol swab. He gave a curt nod, turned, and left. Marianne remained, hand gripping the rail of my bed just long enough for her knuckles to pale. Then she asked quietly, "May I ask, who brought you in?" Not the one who should have, and the one who should have stopped it just watched. She didn't sigh, didn't shake her head. She pulled my blanket up instead, a small act but enough to churn the water inside me. She handed me a paper cup of water. "Sip this. I'll have someone bring you something warm. I need my phone and the zip bag in the drawer. They're sealed with your personal items." She left, returned with a clear nylon bag, my watch, ID card, a small civilian body cam I carried out of habit, and a zip bag holding a shard of glass. I closed my eyes for a second. "Thank you, ma'am." She set a thin brown envelope beside me, lowering her voice to a command. "When you write your report, don't use the word feel. Use observed, and don't sign anything without a chain of custody. Understand?" I opened my eyes. "You're a nurse, but you sound like JAG. Marianne allowed a half smile. "Hospitals are the best classrooms for the law of silence, and sometimes the law for breaking silence." Half an hour later, I managed to sit up straighter. Pain still radiated, but sitting tall made breathing easier. Marianne returned with hot oatmeal and cocoa in a paper cup. "Here, not too much sugar, but enough to restart your brain." "Do you always do this for patients?" "No." She shook her head. "Only for those whose eyes look like they've just crawled out of freezing water and are willing to dive back in." Warmth seeped into me from mouth to stomach to a deeper place, the part people call willpower. I powered on my phone, opened a hidden folder labeled Intake Evid, set the camera to silent mode. I photographed everything: splinted wrist, bruises across my sternum, the scratch on my cheek. I panned across the room, catching the date and time flashing on the monitor. I lifted the shard of glass under the light. A hair clung to it along with a brown fleck of dried blood. "Keep it like that," Marianne said. "I'll bring you 2 proper evidence bags, and if you can, request backup of the corridor footage before it gets accidentally overwritten. I already messaged the duty roster, but I'll need a second voice." She nodded, then leaned closer. "Captain Ward, may I ask something blunt? Why did your father stand by?" She put the word in invisible quotation marks, and my chest tightened. I stared into the cocoa, saw an ocean of years ripple back. My real father, the man who taught me to face waves, gone when I was 12. Mom, slipping into darkness with Caleb, teaching me to read violence in footsteps on the hallway. And years later, when I wore the uniform, Mom passed away one winter on base. The man who entered our lives under the ward name, my stepfather, a general, was the one I forced myself to call Dad, hoping to feel protected again. But the armor he polished daily was never meant for me. It was meant for the ward name, for medals, for legacy. "For honor," I whispered, but not the kind I was taught at MP school. Marianne's hand pressed firm on the rail, anchoring the moment. "If you mean to go through with this," she said, "you'll need a map, not of the base, a map of power." Near noon, 2 MPs arrived, Sergeant Ricks built like a wall and Corporal Gomez, younger, quick-eyed, wary. Rain still clung to their uniforms. They stood at textbook distance, professional, neutral. "Captain Ward," Rick said, voice metallic from training. We need your preliminary statement regarding the domestic dispute at officer housing last night. Which term? I asked. Domestic dispute. I reported unauthorized assault on federal property. Perpetrator, civilian discharged for misconduct. Name, Victor. Ricks blinked slowly. Gomez glanced at my chart, Elena Ward MP CPT. I could see them weighing whether to follow the script or listen to someone who knew the script better than they did. Finally, Gomez opened his notebook. Ma'am, we'll need description of injuries, sequence of events, and individuals present. Corridor cameras have it. Gate logs too, and the honor of a very busy family to protect. Where do you want to start? They said nothing. Marianne slid 2 evidence envelopes onto the table. You can have 15 minutes. But first, note this. Patient requests full backup of corridor footage 22:30 to 00:30. Date today. And add, requests JAG present during formal statement. Ricks cleared his throat, nodded faintly. I began recounting, slow, precise, like drafting a crime scene report. Lock forced, smell of alcohol, impact force, direction of fall, snap of wrist, detail of the shard scratching my mother's photo. No words like disgust or betrayal. Only centimeters, vectors, visible marks. Each sentence nailed down like a plank, firm, straight, exact. When I reached the part where my father entered, Ricks paused his pen. Not because he couldn't spell the name, everyone on base knew it, but because he was deciding how to record it. I helped him. Right, General W appeared sober, observed victim and suspect, did not intervene to stop assault, verbally ordered suspect to leave, instructed victim to clean the room. Gomez looked up, lips parting as if to say something human, then shutting again. They both clicked their pens closed, a metallic thank you, then left. Marianne returned, handed me a photocopy and a new evidence kit. Here, and this. She pulled a slip of paper with a phone number. A major in JAG. I once helped her during training. You can trust her. Call after lunch. Why are you helping me this much? She studied me for a long moment as if weighing her own past. Because once I worked a night shift. The next morning they told me I'd logged the wrong time, but I knew I hadn't. I let them bend time itself, not again. By afternoon, drizzle tapped the window. I was released to barracks monitoring. Marianne wrapped my splint one more time, knotting it with sailor's precision. When you take it off, it'll sting. Pain isn't the enemy. Pain is the body's most honest report. Don't ignore it. Don't let it drive. I stood, slow but straight. Are you on duty tonight? Yes, but before that I have a break. If anyone asks, I'll say I like coffee at the Side Gate Cafe at 1800. If someone happens to stop by, I'll gladly chat. I understood. No one could force a nurse to stay silent on her break. On the way back, the rain polished the concrete like a blade. The new lock on my room gleamed. I reset the calendar I'd taped earlier, straightened the bed, angled my mother's photo to hide the scratch. I sealed the evidence bag, logged the time, sat at my desk. Drew a box in my notebook, truth. From it, arrows to evidence, shard injuries, cameras, medical file. Witnesses, Marianne, duty roster, gate guards. Motive, Victor, debt and pride, General W. Image control. System MP chain, hospital command. Beside each arrow a question, what can be altered, what cannot? My phone buzzed, unknown number. Captain Ward, this is Major Kendra Hale, JAG. I received a quiet referral from a mutual friend. Do you have 5 minutes? I have them, I said, staring at my mother's photo, and a list that needs someone to read. Her voice was calm, practical. I recounted again, this time in legal terms. UCMJ articles, assault on federal property, rights to evidence preservation, request for independent investigation in case of conflict of interest. She listened like a pilot studying terrain before flying into mountains. First, she said, secure your devices, don't use base Wi-Fi. Second, send a written request for corridor footage. Set a deadline. Third, prepare a statement stripped of emotion. I repeat, no emotion. Finally, find a medical witness, say the nurse on duty last night. I have Marianne, I replied, exhaling like dropping a rucksack. Good, Hale said. Alina, they'll pressure you. They'll say for the greater good. You're MP, you know what that phrase means. Remember, the greater good never requires stepping on a victim to protect an offender. The call ended. I stood, wrist heavy but steps lighter. 17:42, 18 minutes to the cafe. Before leaving, I touched my mother's photo, the scratch still carved across her smile like a dry riverbed. I'm drawing the map again, I whispered. Not to run, to march. Outside, the rain had stopped. The air smelled of wet earth and pine. The cafe by the side gate still dripped from the tin roof. I ordered 2 coffees, one iced for my wrist, one strong for my head. Marianne arrived at 17:59, hair frizzed from humidity, jacket thin. She sat and went straight to it. Rix will be called upstairs. I expect it. You don't have much time. I'll go straight, I said. Evidence, witnesses, procedure. And, she added softly, a heart strong enough to survive when truth isn't applauded right away. I nodded. Do you know what it feels like when the man you call father looks at you like you're just a burden? Marianne gazed out at the lot where a street lamp flickered on. In this job, you learn to name things right. Wrong names get you lost. You don't need to call him what they want. You just need to call him what he is. She slid me another slip, Hale's number again with a note. Tomorrow, 2100, nurse station, fax. The old machine still worked. We finished our coffee. She squeezed my left hand, the unbroken one, before leaving. Go, MP, don't let them overwrite your tape. Back to the base, lights blinked on like a star map. My pace quickened. In my head, the pieces aligned, evidence requests, Hale's counsel, Marianne's testimony, the bigger plan forming like a photo in a darkroom. Tonight, I'd write, print, sign. Tomorrow, I'd send. And then I'd return to the infirmary, not for painkillers, but to offer Marianne another cocoa, with thanks she wouldn't let me finish. The wind rose again through the barracks, but unlike last night, it didn't sound like silence whispering. It sounded like boots stomping on parade ground, announcing inspection. I reached my room, set my lamp at 45 degrees, pen angled on a blank page. At the top, I wrote, report no emotion. And then the words poured, not like tears, but like ink drawing the line I'd guard as long as it took for others to finally see it. When I left the Army hospital, I thought there'd at least be one place left in my family to come home to. I was wrong. My phone buzzed nonstop, not with messages of comfort, but with notifications. You have been removed from ward family chat. My profile photo vanished from the list. I opened Facebook. The first thing that hit me was a photo of my father with his arm around Victor, the same man who had cracked my bones the night before. The caption read cold and simple, ward legacy still strong. Comments poured in from relatives. So proud. Carry the family honor, Victor. Not one person asked where I was, if I was alive or dead. With a single click, they rewrote family history, and I, the daughter who'd given her youth to the Army, was erased as if I had never existed. I tried texting my aunt, the one who used to braid my hair and sneak me candy at church. Auntie, I'm okay. I just need to hear your voice. 2 blue check marks. No reply. An hour later, I saw her comment under Victor's photo. You make the Ward family proud. My chest clenched like someone had wrapped a hand around my heart and squeezed. Days passed, and the silence from my family became its own weapon. Every call I made was declined. When I went back to the old house, the gate had a new lock. Manuel, the aging gardener who'd known me since I was a kid, looked at me with pity and shook his head. Orders from your father. No one's allowed to let you in. I stood outside, Texas sun beating on my face, the acrid smell of burnt grass choking my throat. The house that had once been my refuge was now a fortress, guarded not by strangers, but by my own blood. One night, I opened my laptop, desperate for something familiar. I searched through the family photo folders. One by one, each file was gone. My mother's wedding album, pictures from my first day in uniform, the photo of me clutching a trophy after a base marathon, all erased. I realized my father had used his access to our shared iCloud account to permanently delete every trace. I sat in my cramped motel room, staring at the blank screen, feeling like I had been evaporated from the world. It wasn't just that I'd been beaten, not just that I'd been humiliated in front of MPs. Now I'd been erased, no name, no face, no past. What chilled me most was how calm my father had been in doing it. Not furious, not emotional, just efficient. Erasing me wasn't an act of anger. It was a step in his plan to preserve the family's honor. In his eyes, I was no longer a daughter. I was a stain to be scrubbed clean. I sat frozen for hours, clutching the charred scrap of paper I had pulled from my mother's chest, her shaky handwriting still visible. Vulnerability is not failure. It is the measure of courage. And in that moment, I understood. They could erase photos, delete names, change locks, cut ties, but they could never erase memory. And they could never stop me from writing the truth back into existence. I went back to the old house on a sweltering afternoon, Texas sky heavy with bruised clouds, as if the storm wanted to break but held itself back. The dirt road leading to the backyard still carried the tire tracks of my father's military truck. Gravel crunched under my boots, each crack a reminder of the days I'd run barefoot here, chasing dragonflies, playing hide-and-seek with Victor. But that afternoon, the scents of childhood were gone, replaced by something acrid. Smoke, ash, burnt memory. I slowed as I crossed the brittle grass until I reached the charred pit beside the old oak tree. The ash was still warm, curling in thin gray wisps. Among the black heap, twisted metal gleamed like the broken teeth of a dead animal. I recognized it instantly, my mother's chest. Once polished oak, it had sat in my childhood room like a shrine. Inside were her diaries from girlhood, handwritten love letters to my real father, cassette tapes of her voice singing lullabies. It had been my sanctuary. Now it was nothing but cinders. I dropped to my knees. My hands sank into the warm ash, the burn searing my skin, but I didn't pull away. My fingers closed around a warped brass lock, still etched with the dove emblem Mom once told me meant freedom in love. Now it was a mangled relic, cold as betrayal. Your father told me to burn it. The raspy voice startled me. I turned. Manuel stood there, the old gardener who'd known me since elementary school. His shirt was streaked with soot, eyes bloodshot with exhaustion. He wouldn't meet my gaze, as if afraid of betraying me one more time. "What did you say?" My voice cracked. "He called me this morning, ordered me to drag the chest out here." Manuel's hand trembled on his straw hat. Then he handed the lighter to Victor. I didn't dare stop them. He said weak memories shame this family. He said they had to be erased. The wind gusted suddenly, blowing ash into my face, into my hair, into my mouth. And in that stinging cloud, the truth cut clear. They didn't just want me silent. They wanted my mother erased too. Every photo, every diary page, every line of her handwriting turned to dust drifting into the evening sky. A whole life, obliterated as if she had never existed. I clawed through the ash with shaking hands, careful as if gathering the bones of someone killed in a bombing. My fingers blackened, nails tearing, blood seeping, but I didn't stop. I kept searching, desperate for a miracle, and then I saw it, a scrap of paper that had escaped the flames. Edges charred, but a line of shaky handwriting remained. Vulnerability is not failure, it is the measure of courage. Tears finally spilled, but not the tears of weakness. Tears like a vow, they had turned my home to ashes, but they could not take what still burned inside me. Through the haze, I heard the thrum of a helicopter in the distance, blades beating the air with certainty. Training flights, maybe, but to me, it was a reminder of what the MPs had taught me. Evidence isn't just bloodstains or crime scene photos. Evidence is anything that survives destruction. This paper scrap wasn't just my mother's voice. It was the last witness, and I would turn it into a blade. I rose, face streaked with ash, eyes locked on the silent house. And in that moment, I swore my father would regret this, not through blood, through the truth he had buried too long. In my hand, the scrap of paper trembled in the evening breeze. Half of it had burned to ash, but the shaky lines that remained were etched deep into my eyes. Vulnerability is not failure. It is the measure of courage. My mother's handwriting, faded blue ink, letters tilted slightly, like her posture when she read by the window. Looking at those words, my entire childhood flooded back. Evenings when she read scripture aloud, mornings when she tied my hair and whispered, "Courage doesn't mean you're not afraid, sweetheart. It means you still take the step while fear walks beside you." Now those words returned, not to comfort me, but to remind me. Tonight's pain was not the end. It was only the beginning. I knelt, fingers clawing into the dirt. Ash streaked my face, stung my eyes as tears mixed with soot. But at the bottom of that pain, something shifted inside me, like the metallic click of a round chambering into a rifle. My father wanted me erased. He wanted my mother's memory erased. He wanted only one story left standing, the Ward legacy with Victor as the pride. But he forgot one thing: ashes don't obey orders. They ride the wind, cling to skin, weave into hair, fill the lungs. They leave traces. And I was the trace he could never erase. I rose, clutching the charred fragment like evidence. The blood in my veins no longer burned hot with rage like it had when Victor attacked me. This was a colder current, clear, sharp, with a target. "Elena," Manuel's voice quavered. "I'm sorry, I couldn't defy General Ward," he said. I laid a hand on his shoulder, my voice steady, almost unnaturally calm. "You're not the one who owes me an apology. The man in that house does, and one day he'll have to pay it with the truth." Manuel's eyes welled as he nodded, like a weight lifted off him. I walked away, leaving the smoldering ashes behind. Twilight stretched long shadows across the old house. From an upstairs window, I glimpsed the silhouette of my father, rigid, statue-like, hands clasped behind his back. He wanted me to know he was watching. He wanted me to believe I would break. He was wrong. That night, back in my cramped motel near the base gate, I switched on the desk lamp and placed the fragment in the center of my notebook. Around it, I drew circles, arrows, connections, not a diary, a battle plan. Arrow 1, evidence, the fragment, injury photos, medical report, corridor cameras. Arrow 2, witnesses, Marianne, Manuel, anyone who saw Victor enter or leave. Arrow 3, motive, Victor's hunger for honor, my father's hunger to cover it. Arrow 4, battlefield, not Syria, not Iraq, but here on American soil, inside this base, inside this family. Each line I wrote felt like laying another brick into a fortress. And I knew, from tonight on, I was no longer the victim burned out of history. I was the one rewriting it. Before switching off the light, I opened my phone. On the screen was Victor's grinning face under the caption, "Ward Legacy." I saved it into a separate folder labeled Target Alpha. Then I tapped my mother's photo, the one scarred by a scratch still stored in memory, her smile tilted under that ugly mark. I made it my wallpaper, not for remembrance, for reminder. Every time I unlocked my phone, I'd carry that wound with me. That night, as wind howled through the cracks, I whispered into the dark. My father wanted ashes. I'll show him ashes can ignite a fire. The next morning, I was no longer the woman kneeling in ashes. I woke before dawn, when the base was still hushed and the streetlights cast their faint yellow glow over the concrete paths. Every muscle in my body ached, my wrist heavy as if weighted with stone, but my mind was sharp, like the first day I ever stood in front of the military police training board. Objective, route, outcome. In the army, they teach, Be polite, be professional, but always have a plan. I used to think it was just survival advice. Now I knew it was a weapon. And this time the battlefield wasn't Fallujah or Syria. It was right here on American soil, inside the Ward family that had once been my pride. I spread a base map across my desk. Instead of marking guard posts, I wrote in blunt letters, evidence, witnesses, power, route. Gone were the rounded strokes of my old handwriting. These marks were carved hard, sharp, final. Evidence, my mother's fragment, photos of my injuries, medical files, the glass shard that scarred her smile. I had to preserve them as if they were evidence in a felony case. Witnesses, Marianne, Manuel, even Ricks and Gomez, the MPs who heard my statement. They might be scared, but their signatures still existed. Power, JAG. Major Hale was the only gate I had. I needed her words to become my official shield. Route, not charging in recklessly, building the case, making copies, spreading the evidence across safe hands. When one link snapped, others would remain. I remembered training at Fort Leonard Wood, rain freezing down our collars, the instructor shouting, "Never enter a dark room with only one exit." Back then, I thought he meant SWAT tactics. He didn't. Life itself is a dark room, and I needed more than one way out. At the hospital, I found Marianne again, wrapping a soldier's dislocated shoulder. She caught my eye, tilted her head toward the hall. We sat in the break room thick with burnt coffee smell. "I've thought it over," I told her, sliding a folder across. "Not just filing, I'm building a case file, enough that even if they bury part of it, they can't bury all of it." Her gaze mixed worry with pride. "Do you realize who you're up against?" "I do." I nodded. "A 4-star general, but in war, no enemy is immune to truth." She exhaled long, then handed me a small USB. "Copy of the corridor footage from that night. I asked a tech to hold it. They don't know I duplicated it. Don't lose it." I clenched it in my fist. It felt heavier than my Glock. That afternoon, I called Major Hale. Her voice was calm, each word measured. "Ward, I've read your statement. I won't sugarcoat it. This fight will be ugly. But if you stick to the law, you'll have footing. I'll back you, but be careful. They'll try to paint you as unstable, a female officer cracking under stress. Don't give them the chance." "I understand," I said, "and I won't flinch." After hanging up, I opened my notebook, drew a new column, psychological tactics. I listed them like drills, no public arguments. No tears in front of them, speak only in military and legal language. Let evidence speak. By nightfall, I walked laps around the training field. My boots struck pavement like a war drum. To anyone else, it was just one soldier pacing. To me, it was the heartbeat of a one-woman army. And if aimed right, even one soldier could shake the system. I recalled a quote from General Mattis, an instructor once repeated. "Be polite, be professional, but have a plan to kill everybody you meet." I had laughed back then, thinking it was bravado. Now I knew it wasn't about guns. It was about strategy. Every person I encountered, from my father to Victor, to the officers covering for them, had a weakness. And I would find it. Late that night, I returned to my room. I took my mother's fragment from the notebook, sealed it between 2 sheets of plastic, labeled it as evidence. I set it beside the scratched photo, one a relic, one a wound. Looking at them both, I realized I'd stopped crying. Tomorrow, I'd meet Marianne at the nurse's station. We'd send the first fax to JAG. Step by step, I'd widen the circle. I was no longer a victim inside someone else's story. I was the author, and I would write it all. Before turning out the light, I scribbled one line in my notebook. "This war isn't in the desert. It's in the house where I once slept, and I will not lose." That morning, the base blazed under new sunlight. American flags snapped in the wind. The bugle's call carried from the training field in the distance. The installation thrummed like a giant machine, every gear in motion. But inside me, another machine had begun to turn. No fanfare, no drums, only the steady beat of my heart and a cold, deliberate plan. I wore a fresh uniform, collar crisp, boots polished to glass. My splinted wrist hid under the long sleeve, but I forced myself to walk tall, every step measured. To passers-by, I was just another MP captain. None of them could see the storm quietly forming beneath my skin. At 0645, I stood in front of the Army hospital. The hallway smelled of antiseptic and cheap coffee from the vending machine. Marianne met me in the nurse's station, her white blouse wrinkled, hair in a tight bun, but her eyes sharp and awake. "I knew you'd come," she said, holding out her hand. I placed a small folder into it, copies of evidence, photos of my injuries, and a prepared fax. "This is version 1, I told her. I keep the originals, but once you sign as a witness, this file has weight." Marianne opened the folder. Her eyes paused on the charred fragment of my mother's letter, sealed in plastic. She touched it lightly, as if pressing an old prayer. "They may call it trivial," she whispered, "but I see it as the heart of the case." I nodded, slid her a pen. She signed slowly, firmly, like a silent oath. We leaned over the old fax machine in the corner of the nurse's station. Its gears whined, spitting out the paper with a sound like a rifle chambering a round. The first transmission went to Major Hale's office. When the screen blinked sending OK, a weight pressed down and lifted at the same time. Light, because the wheel had begun to turn. Heavy, because there was no way back. "You're at war now," Marianne said, her eyes hard. "Don't expect trumpets, only silence, shadows, and counterstrikes." "I'm used to that," I answered. "In the dark, I see the clearest." That afternoon, my phone buzzed. Major Hale's voice was urgent yet controlled. "Ward, I got the fax. I'll request the Provost Marshal open a preliminary investigation. But be ready, your father will know immediately. He'll strike back. And I promise you, he'll use your own uniform against you." "Good," I said, watching recruits march across the parade field. "He forgot something. I don't wear this uniform to stay silent. I wear it to defend the law." A pause on the line. Then, "I'll be in touch. Keep your head cold, Ward, and don't spend tonight alone." I ended the call, but I didn't reach out to anyone. I needed to face the truth. From this moment forward, every step I took would be tracked. Yet in that solitude, I felt no fear. I felt freedom. Late at night, I sat in my motel room, yellow lamplight falling across my tired face in the mirror. I took my mother's scratched photo and placed it beside the charred fragment. 2 witnesses, 1 scar, 1 message. I laid my hand over both and for the first time in days spoke without trembling. "I'll rewrite the story, Mom, not with tears, with truth." Outside, the night wind rose, rattling the flag over the base. I stood, watching it ripple under the moon, and knew that from now on, every war I fought would no longer be in foreign deserts. It was here, inside my own bloodline. I turned back into the room, my whisper sharp, clear, a private command meant only for me. "The war has begun.